the latest trends and engage in lively discussions. Expect a mix of insight, humor, and mental health, social justice, and relevance that promises an enlightening and enjoyable listening experience, ensuring you don't miss out on this captivating adventure on Next Gen.
Radio Understar, 90.4 FM. Peter Marathon, 105.6 FM.
Never turning back to what was. I've had it. Standing up again, taking
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It is your host Ria Mahomed on Next Gen right here at Radio Al-Ansar. From exploring current trends to delving into pressing issues like social justice and mental health, this show fearlessly tackles the pivotal subjects that resonate deeply within our generation. My mission is to embody authenticity, relatability, and humor, ensuring that even the most challenging discussions become accessible and engaging, creating a space where listeners can feel understood and entertained simultaneously. Now, today's topic of discussion is aura unfiltered, Gen Z in focus. Now, is authenticity just another aesthetic on social media? Well, now, absolutely, this question dives deep into the paradox of authenticity in the digital age, especially as it plays out on social media platforms where Gen Z is both the audience and the curator. Now, is authenticity just another aesthetic on social media? Now, what does authenticity mean today? Now, traditionally, authenticity meant being real, genuine, and true to oneself, unfiltered and unperformed. But in the context of social media, where every post, caption, and even silence is intentional, the very definition of realness gets buried. For Gen Z, who grew up with platforms like Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, authenticity has become a currency, valued highly, but also packaged neatly to fit the rules in a digital engagement. Now, the psychology behind authenticity aesthetic is number one, curated vulnerability. Now, we're in an age where people post crying selfies with deep captions or just woke up stories that still have a filter. Now, this curated imperfection is a strategy designed to seem relatable, but often just as planned as a photoshopped beach picture. Messy bun, mental breakdown chick. But make it aesthetic. Vulnerability becomes content. Pain becomes a story arc. Realness becomes branding. Number two, relatability as a performance. People, especially influencers or content creators, perform authenticity in ways that generate engagement, oversharing trauma, documenting failures, and sharing the raw moments, but always with an undertone of control. Now, the more relatable someone seems, the more trustworthy they become to followers, especially when selling a lifestyle, a product, or an idea. So social media algorithms reward the aesthetic of realness. The algorithms are hungry for what stops people from scrolling. And guess what works? Not just a pretty perfection anymore, but relatable content. Real bodies, awkward moments, anxiety, I'm not like other influencer vibes. That's become the new aesthetic currency. So, ironically, the more we try to be authentic, the more we are encouraged to turn that realness into a digestible, shareable, visually appealing format. Now, the paradox, performing realness. So, think of this. You post a photo dump with blurry pictures, bad lighting, and candids, not because they are the best shots, but because they are a signal that you're not trying too hard. You share your imperfect routine, your messy room, your no makeup face, but the act of posting is still a performance, just a different kind. It's still intentional, still constructed. So the question becomes, is it truly real if we are choosing which parts of our realness to share? And when authenticity becomes a strategy, like many brands and influencers now sell authenticity as a marketing strategy. Be real, buy this. I'm just like you, that's why you can trust me. This isn't sponsored, but it is. The marketing of authenticity turns into a vibe rather than a value, a look, a tone, an energy that can be packaged, sold, and imitated. Now, Gen Z's role in this. Here's the thing. Gen Z sees through the fake, but we also participate in it. We want realness, but we also want aesthetic feeds. We crave connection, but we also want to control over how we're seen. We reject toxic perfectionism, but embrace flawed content that still fits a curated narrative. So we're stuck between wanting to express ourselves and needing to brand ourselves. So is authenticity just another aesthetic? In many cases, yes. It has become something that can be styled, filtered, and monetized, but that doesn't mean it's inherently fake. It just means that it's hypervisual, hyper-connected world. Even being real requires intention and sometimes performance. So anyway, here is how this topic plays out with different groups of people, giving you more angles and perspectives to work toward conversation or content. Like who's performing authenticity on social media and why? Now, influencers and content creators. They have pioneered the authenticity aesthetic. After years of being criticized for perfectionism, they have adapted body positivity posts that are carefully angled, mental health check ins timed for peak engagement, no makeup selfies with soft lighting and filters, and for many creators, being raw or relatable is now part of the business model. I mean, I'm here on Next Gen, I want to be raw and relatable just for you. Now, they're not lying, but the line between personal vulnerability and profitable branding is razor thin. Authenticity is their product now. Now, everyday users like students, workers, Gen Z friends, even non creators are subtly affected. You post a photo dump that says random and messy, but it took 40 minutes to take those shots. You say, I don't care how I look, but you do. You vent online for support, but you're also curating sympathy. It's not a decision, it's not deception, it's self preservation in a hyper judgmental space. For many, the goal is look real but still cool, or be honest but not too exposed. Brands and corporations, yes. Multinationals are getting onto it. We're just like you, ads using slang, Gen Z memes, or TikTok voiceovers. Behind the scenes content to show the human side of the company. Employees doing TikToks in hoodies and sneakers. They use aesthetic of authenticity to seem approachable, ethical, and relatable, even when their practices might suggest otherwise. So it's not evil, it's actually strategic, but it raises this. Can something be authentic when it's clearly manufactured to sell? Now, activists and advocates, one on a more meaningful level, many Gen Z voices are using social media to share lived experiences like race, gender, mental health, poverty, call out injustice, to tell their truths unfiltered. But even here, there's pressure to package pain in palatable formats, to stay on brand with activism, to be performative enough for the algorithm, but real enough to be trusted. It's exhausting, and this begs the question, what do you think? Do we have to turn our trauma into content to be heard? I want to know your perspective. Message us via WhatsApp at 060-904-1056. Now, celebrities and public figures. Celebrities now do relatable PR runs, like talking about anxiety, sharing ugly crying photos, opening up about childhood trauma. While some are sincere, others are clearly coached. While some, their authenticity is sometimes timed with a new album, a brand deal, a rebrand. This can dilute the message for people who are truly struggling and raises distrust. Now, how does Gen Z feel about all this? Now, there's a rising awareness amongst young people. I know this is fake, but I'll still double tap. I want to be real, but not judged. I don't know how to be myself when everyone's watching. Now, this internal conflict creates emotional fatigue. Am I sharing because I want to, or because I have to? So, is there such a thing as an uncurated anymore? Even when you say, this isn't for the algorithm, it still isn't the algorithm, honestly. Even when you say, I don't care how I look, you've still thought about it. So maybe the real question isn't, is authenticity an aesthetic, but rather, can we ever be truly authentic to ourselves online, or are we just performing just a little? And this challenges the Gen Z, and this challenges to reclaim authenticity, not just as a look, but as a practice. not just when you want to show online, but how aligned the image is with who you really are when the camera's off. Now, our next topic of discussion is, does the pressure to be unique cause more anxiety than freedom? Now, absolutely, this is a powerful, multi-layered question that cuts really deep to the heart of Gen Z's social, emotional, and digital experience. Now, let's dive into this. Does the pressure to be unique cause more anxiety than freedom? Now, in a world that constantly tells us to be ourselves, we're left in a silent contradiction. What happens when being yourself becomes a competition? Now, the pursuit of uniqueness, which should be insecurity and paralysis, especially for Gen Z, this pressure is magnified by social media, hustle culture, and hyper individualism. Where does this pressure come from? Now, cultural messages. From childhood, Gen Z has become bombarded with slogans like, "You're special, be original, don't follow the crowd." While these are meant to be empowering, they are also subtly implying, if you're not different enough, you don't matter enough. So being average starts to feel like failure, fitting in becomes taboo, and blending in feels like invisibility. Now, the digital age, platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube don't just encourage self-expression, they gamify it. Your quirks, style, takes, aesthetic, and opinions are all on display. Your difference is your brand, and it's judged in real time via likes, shares, and comments. This transforms authenticity into performance and uniqueness into pressure. So, anyway, I will be back right after the ad break where we will be discussing freedom versus anxiety, the double-edged sword, freedom in uniqueness.
You showed me a light to you when I was surrounded by dark. I can't live that again. I'm asking on being, please have mercy on me and take it easy on my heart. Wasn't always on the day.
Through your day. Radio Al Ansar.
Sunnah a day. Proudly brought to you by Sunpick. 100% pure sunflower cooking oil. Sunpick. Cook more with less.
मेरे नबी प्यारे नबी सुन्नत तेरी दुनिया दी.
Sunnah a day. If someone arrives while one is eating, it is sunnah to invite him to join in the meal.
Sunnah a day. Proudly brought to you by Sunpick. 100% pure sunflower cooking oil. Sunpick. Cook more with less.
Imagine this. You're putting together a 7-color meal, from the creamy pasta to the glazed carrots and flavorful onion gravy. This entire meal is made with our 100% pure extra virgin olive oil from our La Familia range, bringing outstanding quality and taste to your kitchen. Shop La Familia 100% pure extra virgin olive oil at any leading supermarkets near you. La Familia, heart of the home.
This segment is brought to you by Kenfield Auto, your RMI approved service and repair specialist. 236 Brickfield Road, Overport.
Kenfield Auto. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. ربنا اغفر لنا ولإخواننا الذين سبقونا بالإيمان ولا تجعل في قلوبنا غلا للذين آمنوا.
Car won't start?
Kenfield Auto.
Noisy brakes?
Kenfield Auto.
Due for a service?
Kenfield Auto. Kenfield Auto. The answer to all your car problems. Your service and repair specialist for your VW, Audi, Suzuki, Toyota, or just about any vehicle. Kenfield Auto, your RMI and insurance approved workshop to handle them all. 236 Brickfield Road, Overport. Call us on 031 207 2399. Kenfield Auto.
Join Al Ansar Outreach in spreading warmth this winter. For just 130 Rand, you can sponsor a blanket and bring comfort to families in KZN who cannot afford winter essentials. Together, we can make a difference. Don't let the cold win. Share the warmth, show you care. Sponsor today and be part of the change. Contact Outreach on 031 208 1601 for more information.
Ladies, you've been waiting for this Sip and Paint event. Join us for a creative afternoon of sipping and painting. Saturday, July 19th, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., 207 West Road, Conference Hall.
Unleash your inner artist, relax and enjoy good company. All materials provided for just 300 Rand.
Let's get creative and make some unforgettable memories. Call Hajra now on 075 082 4327.
اللهم إنك ترى ما نزل بنا في غزة من الأحوال يا ذا الجلال والعزة يا ذا الجبروت والعزة اللهم أعز أهل غزة اللهم فرج عن أهل غزة اللهم فرح أهل غزة اللهم انصر أهل غزة اللهم داو جريحهم اللهم اشف مريضهم اللهم اقبل شهيدهم اللهم ارحم ميتهم اللهم كفف جراحاتهم وبرد آلامهم اللهم واجعل لهم وللمسلمين فرجا قريبا يا الله اللهم فرج عنا وعن المسلمين في كل مكان اللهم انصر الإسلام وأعز المسلمين واخذل الشرك والمشركين ودمر أعداء الدين يا رب العالمين سبحانك سبحانك ترى الظالمين فتمهلهم حتى يظنوا أنك تهملهم وتبتلي الصالحين في الدنيا حتى يستيئسوا فإن استيئسوا أتيتهم بنصرهم اللهم إنك تعلم أن جراحات المسلمين كثيرة وآلامهم كثيرة في كل مكان وفي كل زمان اللهم فانصرنا على أعدائنا يا الله اللهم فثبت أقدامنا يا الله.
We'd love to meet you. Pay us a visit. Radio Al-Ansar.
It's Ria Mahomed here, hosting the Next Gen show on Radio Al-Ansar. It's not just a radio show, it stands as a powerful movement in its own right. It embodies the essence of individuality, creativity, and positivity, where we explore the latest trends and engage in lively discussions. Expect a mix of insight, humor, and mental health, social justice, and relevance that promises an enlightening and enjoyable listening experience, ensuring you don't miss out on this captivating adventure on Next Gen.
Okay, beautiful souls, it is me, Ria Mahomed, back live on Next Gen. Now, we are going to be talking about freedom versus anxiety. The double-edged sword, freedom is uniqueness. Now, at its best, being unique allows people to break norms, encourages creative risk-taking, gives voice to the unseen and unheard, empowers you to define success on your own terms. But anxiety in being not unique enough. What if your story has already been told? Your art is not innovative. Your voice doesn't stand out in the algorithm. You start to overthink, what's my thing? Am I doing enough? Am I different enough? Do I need to reinvent myself again? And it leads to imposter syndrome, like, I'm faking it. Identity confusion, who am I really? Burnout, how long can I keep up this persona? Perfectionism. If it's not iconic, why even try? Now, the myth of effortless individuality. Now, the social media promotes the unique illusion that uniqueness should be effortless. Now, that you should naturally stand out, that if you are truly special, it'll just click. But most of what we admire is highly curated, like effortless style that takes hours of Pinterest boards. Unique and authentic personality is often coached. Original content borrows heavily from trends, so now people feel guilty not just for copying, but even for trying too hard. Now, trying to be unique becomes cringy, yet not trying to feel invisible. It's a no-win game. So comparison culture and identity performance, with constant exposure to curated lives, Gen Z often compares creativity, lifestyle, fashion, language, and even trauma, like who has had the most relatable struggle. Everyone's identity becomes content and comparison is instant. What gets lost? The value of quiet growth. The freedom to explore without pressure. The permission to be ordinary even if it's just for a little while. Now, the invention of fatigue. Gen Z lives in an era where you're expected to have a niche. You must pivot if your content doesn't perform. Reinvention is constant, like new aesthetics, identities, careers, even names. While reinvention can be beautiful, it can actually also be truly exhausting. You never just are, you're always becoming. And if becoming isn't fast, viral, or unique, you feel stuck. So, what's the way out? Redefining uniqueness. So, instead of unique equals never been done before, what if it meant true to your voice, even if others sound similar? Rooted in your story, even if it overlaps with others. Focused on depth, not visibility. Because even the most unique artists, thinkers, and creators borrow, blend, and build on what came before. Community over competition. Now, what if uniqueness didn't isolate you but connected you? Your weird becomes someone else's relief. Your unoriginal story gives someone with the words they could not find. Your average day becomes someone else's inspiration. Being real without the pressure to perform is becoming radical in itself. So, the question is it okay to just be you? In the end, yes, striving for uniqueness can unlock incredible freedom, but when it becomes a standard, it becomes a currency or a comparison trap. It steals the very piece it's meant to give. So maybe the goal isn't just to be the most unique, just the most present, the most grounded, the most honest version of yourself. Because in a world obsessed with standing out, being real might not be the most unique thing of all. In fact, that may be the most unique thing of all. Absolutely. Now, does the pressure to be unique cause more anxiety than freedom? The individuality in the age of mass visibility. Now, before social media, individuality was often private. You could be different in your own little world, your room, your journal, your circle. But now uniqueness has become public. Your taste in music is on your Spotify Wrapped. Your thoughts are on your Twitter timeline. Your style is on your TikTok aesthetic. Your opinions are in your bio. Everything is visible and everything is ranked, liked, or ignored. So the need to be different is no longer just an internal, it's market tested. And if you're not interesting enough to gain traction, it can start to feel like you don't matter. Now, the aesthetic pressure, the rise of personality traits and types. In recent years, Gen Z has found identity through aesthetics like cottagecore, clean girl, dark academia, soft boy, alternate baddie, minimalist, maximist, weirdcore, that girl. But behind the fun, it's kind of pressure. What's your aesthetic? Why don't you have one? Your personality is expected to be visually branded, easily understood, shareable. It makes individuality feel performative, a costume you would rather wear, something you embody. And the moment it stops feeling you, there's pressure to rebrand again. Now, identity versus branding. Now, in Gen Z culture, the line between self expression and personal branding is blurry. Self expression is internal. This is who I am. Branding is internal. This is how I want you to see me. And while branding isn't inherently bad, it comes with questions like, am I expressing or impressing? Would I still like to be like this if no one was watching? Am I shaping my identity or shaping an audience? Over time, trying to be uniquely marketable can become emotionally exhausting. Now, the mental health cost of constant individualism, hyper uniqueness encourages self awareness but also breeds overthinking. How will this come across? Isolation, no one really gets me. Paranoia, am I original or am I just copying? Imposter syndrome, maybe I'm just pretending. It creates a kind of internal surveillance. You're always watching yourself, curating your thoughts, tweaking your brand, even in your most private moments. That is not freedom. That is mental fatigue. Now, what if you're not the main character? We've seen a rise in main character syndrome, this belief that you're meant to be the center of your own cinematic story. It's empowering until it's not. Because sometimes your life is quiet, your day is boring, you don't want to perform. And you start to feel like you're falling behind because your life doesn't look like it matters. But real life isn't always a story arc. And not everyone has to be the main character to be deeply valuable. Now, the courage to be normal in a world obsessed with disruption, being ordinary feels like rebellion. To say, I like basic things and I'm okay with it. I don't want to constantly stand out. I don't need to be the loudest voice in the room. That takes that kind of quiet confidence. It says, my worth isn't based on how different I am, it is based on how true I am. That's not settling, that's sovereignty. The cultural and societal layer, the global South voice. For many Gen Z youth in Africa, Asia, and the Caribbean, or disparate communities, there is added pressure. To be global and local, to stand out in westernized spaces without losing cultural roots, to be unique in a way that still makes sense to its home and abroad. Sometimes the fear is, if I don't look or sound like them, I won't be seen. But also, if I do, I'll lose me. So uniqueness becomes balancing act, a tightrope between visibility and authenticity. Now, who are you without performance? Maybe the more powerful question isn't how can I stand out, but who am I when I stop trying to be impressive? Because your value isn't your difference, it's your depth. Your uniqueness doesn't have to be loud to be real. Now, how does growing up online affect how we form our sense of self? Now, this is one of the most defining questions of our time. The idea that Gen Z has grown up online isn't just about being tech savvy. It's about how identity, self worth, and even reality have been shaped by life on the internet. So let's break this down. How does growing up online affect how we form our self and sense of self? TLDR, growing up online blurs the lines between who we are, how we're seen, and who we photos, DMs, and comments. This constant visual feedback loop teaches us who am I, who I am, is shaped by what others see in me. So instead of developing a sense of internally, many young people grow up relying on likes to validate confidence, shares to validate creativity, comments to validate worth. Now the online self becomes this kind of digital reflection, one that's edited, filtered, and public. And over time, it becomes hard to know where the real me ends and the curated me begins. Now, the performance of personality. Being online means you're always a little bit on. Even when you're not trying to go viral, you're aware that someone might be watching. This leads to performing confidence when you're insecure. Posting candid shots that were staged, adopting trends or slang to stay relevant, filtering pain so it's palatable. Your personality becomes content. Your identity becomes a brand. Your feelings become part of an aesthetic. The danger? You can get stuck in the persona you've curated, even if you outgrow it. So, identity as a constant work in progress, but public. Offline self discovery is private. Online, it's public and archived. You try out a new style, it's screenshotted. You express a controversial opinion at 15, and it resurfaces at 25. You post an emotional story, it gets judged or reposted. Growing up online removes the luxury of making mistakes in silence, and that creates a kind of self-consciousness that can stunt growth. You're not just exploring, you're managing perception. Am I allowed to change if everyone remembers who I used to be? Now, this comparison as the default setting. Growing up online means you always seeing what other people are doing. Who's successful, who's traveling, who's beautiful, who's viral, who's in love. This creates a comparison culture where your self-worth is often measured against someone else's highlight reel. And even though we know it's still curated, it still hits. Why am I behind? Why do I look like that? Why haven't I figured it out yet? The result? A sense of inadequacy and urgency. You're constantly trying to catch up to some version of success or self you saw on someone else's story. Now, the hyper-social identity loop, growing up online creates something called social feedback loop. You express something, people react, you internalize that reaction, it shapes how you express yourself next time. And over time, your identity becomes shaped not by introspection, but by what gets approved, what gets ignored, what gets rewarded. You begin to tweak yourself for better social results, like laughing in a way that gets more likes, sharing stories that gets more DMs, hiding beliefs that gets hate. This is subtle, but powerful. And it often becomes and leads to identity fragmentation, where you become a different version of yourself on different platforms or with different audiences. Now, information overload and self-confusion. Growing up online also means growing up with some actress to everything. Even every philosophy, every aesthetic, every identity label, every critique, every trend. This can be empowering, but also overwhelming. You're constantly exposed to 10 ways to be a better person. Here's why your behavior is toxic. You're not really healing yourself if you're still doing this. If you're not healing, if you're not hustling, you're failing. It's a non-stop bombardment of who you should be, which can leave you to doubting yourself, overthinking your choices, feeling like you're never doing enough. Now, digital intimacy versus real connection. Online, you can build up deep friendships, find your community, and express things you can't say in real life. And I think that's beautiful. For many, it also means struggling with in-person vulnerability, replacing real relationships with parasocial ones, feeling deeply connected but also deeply alone. When most of your life is experienced through a screen, you can start to feel disconnected from your body, your instincts, and your physical environment. Reclaiming the self in the digital world. So, how do we unhook our sense of self from the screen? Now, here's a few pathways. Digital detoxing isn't enough. You don't need to escape the internet. You need to change your relationship with it. Now, this means curating your feed with intention, following people who make you feel grounded, not anxious, taking control of how much you share and why, rebuild offline identity. Ask yourself, who am I when I'm not being perceived? What brings me joy that no one else sees? What kind of silence do I enjoy? Reclaim spaces that are yours alone. Journaling, cooking, walking, praying, dancing, where performance has no place. Normalize evolution. Remember, you are allowed to change. You are allowed to delete posts, reintroduce yourself, leave a trend, or try a new one. Growth should not feel like a PR crisis. It should feel like a homecoming. So growing up online means that we're the first generation raised not just with the internet but inside it. We're the first to build identities while being watched, to be liked before we even know how to love ourselves, to face the pressure of being visible before we even sure of who we are. But in that tension lies power. If you can find peace, purpose, and self-trust in a world that constantly tries to define you, that is the real revolution. Anyway, can you truly reinvent yourself in a digital world that never forgets? Now, let's build this on an even more going deeper into the psychological, socio-cultural, and existential dimensions of what it really means to grow up online. So, how does growing up online affect how we form our sense of self? The algorithm shapes the self. Social media doesn't just affect who you are, it subtly nudges you into becoming someone else. Platforms are built to reward engagement over nouns, extremes over subtly, performance over processes. So over time, the algorithmic gaze becomes a quiet voice in your head. Post that, it'll do well. Don't say that, it won't land. This doesn't trend, it doesn't matter. Without realizing it, you start aligning your behavior, opinions, and even beliefs to what performs well online. This means you exaggerate pain to sound relatable. You might suppress joy to appear deep. You could distort identity to seem more aesthetic or niche. And what's the scary part? The algorithm doesn't just predict who you are, it starts to produce it. Now, the identity as a content pillar. For older generations, identity was something you discovered. For Gen Z, it's something you have to package. On platforms like TikTok, you're encouraged to pick a niche, a story, a voice, an aesthetic, a struggle, a belief. You become a type of person with a type of brand, like an activist, the clean girl, the sad boy, the soft life CEO, the healing era influencer. This can be empowering. It helps people find community and vocabulary, but it also flattens complexity. And if your identity is a content pillar, then what happens when your interests change, your mood shift, your values evolve? You may feel trapped by character you created. Now, the infinite loop of reinvention. Growing up online means that there is always a new trend, a new ideology, a new aesthetic. So identity becomes revolving door. This week I'm self-launch healing. Next week I'm in my feral girl summer. Now I'm rebranding into a mysterious dark feminine era. Reinvention is exciting, but when it's constant, it creates exhaustion, disorientation, fear of being behind. It becomes hard to tell if you're actually evolving or just updating your identity to match what's trending. And sometimes you might wonder, who am I in the quiet moments when I'm not building a brand? Now, digital shame and hyper visibility. Growing up online also means that your mistakes, cringy phases, or unpopular opinions are screenshotable, rewatchable, weaponizable. Cancel culture and call out culture have taught many young people that if you say or do the wrong thing, even once, it could follow you forever. And this creates fear of experimenting, reluctance to speak freely, a perfectionist mask. So instead of growing into yourself, you shrink away from risk. And that fear quietly stunts your personal development. Now, parasocial pressure, feeling known by strangers. When your life is online, people you've never met feel like they've known you. And because of that, they feel entitled to comment on your personality, expect emotional transparency, judge your choices, demand consistency. You're not just living your life, you're managing perceptions of it. And that pressure to be authentic, relatable, vulnerable, but also perfect, brand safe, and entertaining is overwhelming. So sometimes the digital self becomes so heavy, it starts to crush the real one underneath. Now, the rise of identity language. Growing up online, Gen Z has access to a stunning vocabulary of identity, like I'm a people pleaser, I'm anxious, preoccupied, my inner child is wounded. This language can also help us understand ourselves, but it can also lock us into labels, turn healing into static, replace growth with diagnosis. Over-identifying with certain terms can make you feel stuck in a particular version of yourself, especially when the identity becomes part of your social brand. So, the online self is an element, performative. The effect, you're always being watched, even when alone. The element, editable. Effect, you can tweak, filter, and delete parts of yourself. The element, comparative. The effect of that is your sense of self is shaped against the other's lives. The element, marketed. Effect, identity becomes your product. Element, monitored. Your algorithms track and influence your behavior. Public, the element that leads to mistakes that are archived and exposed. Element, fragile. And that effect is constant validation is needed to feel real. So, the question is, what's the solution? Here's where hope lives. Growing up online doesn't mean you're losing yourself, right? It means learning how to protect, reclaim, and anchor yourself. Practice digital self-compassion. Not every phase needs to be aesthetic. Not every version of you is permanent. You are allowed to delete, pause, go quiet, or return. Build an offline foundation. Cultivate hobbies that don't require validation. Journal thoughts that no one else will read. Have friendships that aren't filtered through memes. Create in private. Make art, write, or speak without uploading it. Let your inner world breathe before it becomes a feed. So, growing up online has given us access to tools, language, and power. But it has also hijacked our intention, fragmented our identities, and turned self-worth into a performance metric. But you are also allowed to grow outside your audience. You are allowed to exist without being seen. And you are still you, even when no one's watching. Because who you are offline is often the truest version of all. So, this is existential, emotional, and even spiritual impact on growing up online because this isn't just a Gen Z experience. It is a generational shift in the architecture of the self. So, the collapse of privacy, always seen, rarely known. Growing up online means being seen constantly but not necessarily understood. Your followers might know what you look like, what you eat, what you believe, what you wear. But do they know what scares you when you're alone? What haunts you with your quiet thoughts? What you pray for when no one's around? In the digital world, visibility replaces intimacy. You might feel exposed, but invisible. It's like standing on a stage, but never being truly heard. I'm known by thousands, but understood by none. This breeds a loneliness that's hard to explain because on paper you connected, but in reality you're spiritually isolated. So the fluid of self, identity as a stream and not a structure. In the past, identity was seen as a solid. I'm this. Now it's fluid. I'm exploring this today. There's power in that. You can evolve, shift, undo, relearn. But fluidity also creates instability. You never really know who you are. You're overwhelmed where you have too many choices. Imposter syndrome. Am I pretending again? This constant motion can feel freeing or dizzying. Sometimes we want to land somewhere, to have something, to feel final, grounded, real, but online life makes performance feel impossible. So the emotional regulation in the era of performance, growing up online trains you to internalize your feelings. If I'm sad, I should post a sad quote. If I'm healing, I should show my soft era. If I'm angry, I should make a thread or a rant. Your emotions are rarely felt for yourself alone. They are often filtered through audience engagement. The screen becomes your therapist, your diary, your stage. This distorts emotional processing. You stop sitting with your feelings and start performing through them. As a result, pain becomes content. Healing becomes aesthetic. Grief becomes a storyline. It's emotionally performative, but spiritually unprocessed. The death of boredom, the rise of disconnection. Boredom used to be the birthplace of imagination, reflection, creativity, but now boredom is unbearable. But why? Why? That's because there's always something to scroll. There's always someone to compare yourself to. There's always a distraction waiting. This creates a self that is restless, fragmented, addicted to stimulation. You never sit long enough to truly know yourself. And that silence is the one that births identity. It's constantly interrupted. The result? A generation that's busy but disconnected, visible but unsure, expressive but numb. The spiritual displacement, where do we anchor the soul? For many, growing up online replaces religion, community, and philosophy with influences, vibe, culture, trends, internet morality. But the soul craves something deeper. A sense of belonging is not based on visibility, a reason for existence beyond engagement, a purpose that isn't content. Without that, a subtle spiritual ache emerges. I'm doing everything right, so why do I still feel lost? That's not depression, that is disconnection from self. And healing it requires something deeper and logging off. So, the voice inside, who is it really? When you grow up online, your inner voice gets crowded with narratives from influencers, opinions from comment sections, pressure from algorithms, labels from strangers, and eventually you stop recognizing your own voice. You start hearing the world in your head. So, to reclaim yourself, you have that quiet noise. You have to ask, what's truly mine? What have I inherited from the feed? Who am I without their gaze? So, the journey home. To grow up online is to be shaped by thousands of hands before you've even built your own. But you are still allowed to unfollow the noise, reclaim your thoughts, redefine your worth, and come home to yourself. And no algorithm can guide you there. That journey is yours alone. I am not my profile. I am not my posts. I am not who they think I am. I am who I become when the noise fades. I am the self I meet in silence. I am becoming me. Anyway, it is time to wrap up. I will see you next week, Thursday, the 26th of June, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.